All right, so the mic is over to you, Tony.
Great. Thank you very much, Hanan. And thank you for the opportunity. We're talking about a really exciting subject matter. It's how to manage a game dev team. So I'll just start by showing the title of my talk, which is Herding Cats, which is also the name of the game that I'm currently working on. And I'm using the techniques that I'm going to talk about very soon on this project to keep myself organized. It's just myself. But the software that I'm going to be talking about, I have been using it for the last 3 years with my company in Singapore called BoomZap. That's a large team, and I've used it years before now as well. So Herding Cats is getting everybody together working on a project and pulling in the same direction. You could call it Herding Cats. It can be difficult to get everybody just on the same kind of wavelength. And that's what project management is, basically. But I'll get to that. So a little bit about me. This is my 21st year, actually, in game development. I was one of the first people employed by Crytek in 1999. And in 2000, I was the second person to move to Germany, where Crytek is based, to start work on a game that would turn into Far Cry. And I was a level designer back then. Well, I was really a 3D artist using 3D Studio Max. I just wanted to model stuff all day, vehicles and trees and guns and things. And when I was starting to try and get into like applying for jobs and companies, I did wonder, what is project management and how would I know what to do? Who would tell me? And would I be up to the task of delivering what was asked of me? When I joined Crytek, they didn't need any artists. They said they needed a game designer, and so they told me to do game design. And I haven't been a 3D artist for 20 years now, because I started at Far Cry on Far Cry as a level designer, as a game designer. Shipped that title, moved on to the Crisis project, became a producer, associate producer first, and then producer. And I finished my time at Crytek working on the Rise project for Xbox One, which is a launch title. So I was the game director on that during pre-production and flew out to Microsoft in Redmond on the Pacific Coast a few times. And so I went from like asking how do I do a level design to running a team, and trying to figure out how to get everybody to do the same thing. And now I work for this company in Singapore, and I'm also working on my own game. So that's a little bit about me. What is this webinar? So what is project management in games? What it used to be like and why that didn't work, what we do now, and how I'm using these techniques to work on my own game. So I'll talk about that first. I don't know if you guys know, but there's this trend online right now, how it started and how it's going. So this is the project that I started back in April, and I made a prototype version of the game, and I'll show you the actual game. If I find it on my other screen. It's called Shape Match at that time because I'm really good at names. You have to match the shapes. So the shapes drop from the sky, and you have to try and match 2 or more shapes together and knock them off the board. But when they get close together, you get points. They touch each other, they go, ah, this is a shape just like me, and you get points for that, and then the board clears. The longer you leave shapes lying on the board, the quicker they kind of turn gray. And I call it fossilizing. They turn into fossils, and now if you touch them, you can break the game. When the board fills up with fossilized shapes, it no longer you can no longer get new shapes falling from the sky, and so you've lost the level. And so the idea is that you're tickling that part of your brain where you're identifying shapes and colors, and you're reacting to what you can see, and you're trying to keep the board clear. And if you absolutely need to, you can drop a bomb and that will clear some of these shapes away. And so this was a prototype game that I was working on. And this is currently how it looks. In between time, I switched platforms, so now this is running on Unity, and I can show you that running. So the idea is that it's a mobile game, free to play, and you basically you work your way through a bunch of levels. If you think Candy Crush Saga, that kind of thing, and instead of shapes, now they're cute little animals that fall from the sky. And if you touch two together, you get points. If you touch a bunch of them together, you get combos. If you group them, like there's 2 in a group there, 3 in a group there, you get more points and you build up streaks. And as you work your way through the levels, they're all pretty short, pretty quick experiences. But the idea is that if you touch 2 non-like animals together, then you can drop a bomb and you can clear out the levels. So as the game goes on, you get more challenges, you get more creatures, you get a faster rate of drops, that kind of thing. And it's designed to kind of keep you happily engaged. It's not designed to be very difficult or tricky. It's, again, think Candy Crush Saga. So what I'm using to manage this project is a tool called Trello, and we'll talk about that in a little moment. But what is project management in games? Basically, project management is the process of getting features into the game, which are going to make the game more fun and more complete. And what I've noticed in my time in the industry is it's kind of easy to get features into the game that aren't finished. Like you get to 70% and you tend to go, we'll come back to that at the polish phase. And the issue is that you never really know when a feature is done. When can we stop working on this feature? Because we all like to polish, we like to keep working on something that's fun, especially if it's core gameplay mechanics, like the stuff that's designed to be most attractive to players, to be the essence of the game itself. That's really fun. And you can fall into a trap of working on that, adding more particles, more sound effects. Whereas stuff like user interface is less fun. It's very important, but with games that are out these days, if you've played any free-to-play games on mobile recently, user interface is kind of the biggest part to it, especially during the meta game, like the map screen, where they want to keep your engagement up. They want to keep you playing, so they throw daily rewards at you. Sign up for this thing. If you keep playing, then we'll keep giving you rewards. If you play this mini game, this sub game, and you come back 12 hours from now, then you'll get a reward. And so user interface stuff it's very important, and that stuff needs a high level of polish. It needs animations, but it's hard work as opposed to the core of the game. So project management is about getting features into the game, knowing when the feature is done, knowing which features can go into the sequel or into the patch, because you need to shipping as a feature. And project management is about knowing who is going to be doing what, where are the responsibilities. I'm working on this game on myself, so I do all of the art, all of the user interface, all of the programming. But you guys will probably be, if you work with the competition in December, we'll be working with at least one other person. And it can be very helpful if you've got an artist and a coder to know which person is working on which feature at what time, so you can coordinate. So how we used to do things in the games industry is very slapdash, I would say. It's not like engineering, for example, where there's a set process. We did, in the early 2000s, we tried using the Gantt chart, the dreaded Gantt chart, as I call that, and that changed into Excel sheets. And this is an example of a Gantt chart. I don't know if you can see the text. It doesn't really matter. What you need to know is features kind of go down the left-hand side, and there's a status column, a who column, and then dates. And as the chart goes from left to right, you work your way through these dates, and as one of these features on the left-hand side gets finished, you color in that block on the right on the dates or the deliverable, like the end of the week, the Friday. And the idea is that the dream was to sit down at the very beginning of the project, write out this huge Gantt chart with every feature that a game needs, every piece of art, every asset. And then you'd say, okay, this game needs to be done by July of next year. This is the chart that's going to get us here. As we can see on April 13th, we're going to be at this stage. This feature is going to be finished. And then everybody would know the scope of the game. And games do not work like that, because games, when you're working on them, they have to be fun. And you cannot put, on this date, we will achieve the fun of the game in a Gantt chart. It's a process of discovery. And the other issue with games is every feature you put in is not one discipline. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but games 20 years ago, up until quite recently, game companies had departments: the coding department, the art department, the design department. And as you're working with features, the idea was the coders would do the code, and then the artists would inject some art into that. And through some magical process, you come to a place where that ended up on the screen and people were enjoying it. Departments, I've come to the conclusion, in video games are really, really bad. It leads to what's called silos. So all the coders need their quiet over there in the corner, and they're just typing all day and implementing features, and then they're done, and then they walk home, and now it's over to the artist to inherit the code. It doesn't work, and we've switched to a much more cross-discipline kind of a Scrum-based system where you have one coder, one artist, and one designer sitting together, and they come up with the feature and how long the feature is going to take and what the feature is going to consist of. And those people are responsible for delivering the feature. So this is the old way. This is the way that we kind of discovered it. It did not work. It's hard to quantify the fun. Departments end up being departments where the coder can finish writing the last line of code and say, all right, my part of it is done, but the feature's not on the screen yet. And so the feature is not complete. And so you can't really say the feature is complete. And if the feature isn't complete, the game is not going to be complete. And the other problem of this chart is it's kind of a fiction, in that you say by this date you'll have this feature in, where this chart was generally designed by the project manager. And maybe the project manager used to be a coder or an artist or a designer. Usually they're ex-coders. Or maybe they've come to the games industry from a different industry, and they're not any of those specific types of people. Their project management is what they perceive in the university. And what we found is that these people come up with dates that had nothing to do with the reality on the ground. Another learning we had was that people making the tasks, they need to be told what is expected, but they come up with the dates and they come up with the actual content, not a project management. So it's become much more bottom up, where it used to be very top down. And it was kind of fun at Crytek in the early years, looking at these Excel sheets, these bright colors. We would just blow through these deadlines and dates because it had nothing to do with reality. And it was an attempt to be a reflective of the game, but it never was. The dates were always wrong by 4 to 6 months, because they were based on somebody's guesswork as opposed to somebody's, I've done this task before, I've done this feature before, I know how long it's going to take. All right, so let's talk about features. Features going into the game. If you put enough features into the game, eventually the game is going to be finished and you're going to be done with it. So here's an example of a feature, a loading screen. Like, could be 3 cats. And this is the image displayed on the screen while the game is loading. So what do you need for that? You need the picture, and you need a line of code that says load in this picture and display it. And then you probably want to delete the picture after you've after you displayed it to save some memory. And there might be an animated progress bar. So it's 3 things, right? That you could say that's a feature. But that's one end of the scale of what a feature can be. A complicated feature would be a player moving in third-person mode. So you've got the 3D character, and that is a whole bunch of tasks unto itself. So you've got to model the character, you've got to animate it, you've got to rig it, you've got to texture it, you've got to export it into the game format so that it's actually displayed on the screen. And then you need a camera following behind it. That's a code task. And then it doesn't bump into the walls. So there's a code task and a level design task to make sure that the level is built in a way that the camera isn't constantly hitting things. Input system. So this game could be on a PC or it could be on a console. You've got to account for both. And then you've got the nice stuff like the footsteps on the ground, the sound effects, the particles. So this is a huge list of things, and it touches basically every part of the game. It's not just a code task. It's got art, it's got level design, it touches everything. But really you want a system where you can track both types of features, so the really simple ones and the bigger ones. And yes, what we've highlighted here is that there are dependencies between all of the people involved. So the modeler, he's not just done when he finishes modeling the character, he gives it to the programmer or he gives it to the rigger. The rigger does their work rigging it, making sure the animations work. They give it to the programmer puts it in, triggers it in the right place in the code. And then there's a process, because it never works first time. You go back and you polish and you iterate. So there's a lot of dependencies, and it leads to a lot of waiting between people. So the programmer's waiting for the animator's waiting for the modeler. And what you don't want is downtime where the programmer, probably your most expensive asset, is waiting around doing nothing. So that feature is finished when the character's on the screen, the camera works, you see the sounds, you hear the sounds, you see the particles, and it's all being tested, because testing is another feature that generally tends to happen in a serious way towards the end of the project, where you'll have a QA person who plays it, looks at it, finds the bugs, sends reports back, and tells the people, could be an animation bug, could be a code bug, this is not done yet. And polish could be called a feature. So if your game near the end of the process is not looking up to speed, not looking competitive, then you could say that making the animations look nicer is a feature itself. Ahmed Hariri, you've raised a hand. Do you have any questions? I can't see a text box anymore. There's the chat. Don't use Zoom very much. There we go. The question should have the expertise of rendering 3D characters. Rendering to make them look nice in a kind of a concept art point of view, if you're a 3D modeler, absolutely. Knowing how the rendering system in the code of the game works, which shaders are really heavy, which shaders you can get away with because things are in a far distance, is a skill that a 3D modeler needs to know. Yes, so when you're modeling, there's at no point when you're creating assets do you get to say, oh, I've finished my beautiful piece of work and it's over to somebody else and they can fix all of the issues with it. Everybody in the games industry working on a game has to understand to a degree other people's jobs as well and what's going to be required of them. 10th grade, you could start. Yeah, there's lots of free software and there's no time like the present. I would highly recommend you start making a basic character and figuring out how to animate it. Definitely. Yeah. No problem. All right, so back to our Gantt chart. Look, it's it gives me conniptions just looking at it, the colors, the dates. These things as you're putting them into the game, in your 3D character, your sound effects, maybe your sound effects guy is working on the music for the game, right? So he doesn't get to work on this, getting the character footsteps in on the second week of February. And so what you thought was true at the beginning of the process, laying this thing out, becomes fiction very quickly. We talked about dependencies. Whose fault is it? That's my way of saying when somebody doesn't do something and put it into the game because they don't know it, they're supposed to. That can be an issue as well. And when something breaks, why is this broken, and how can they fix it? So the problem, the answer to all problems forever and ever and evermore is a project management system called Trello. And this is a screenshot of my current herding cats Trello. But let's see if I can bring up my actual Trello. Okay. So this looks really complicated, and you don't know what direction it goes. And there's some screenshots, and there's multiple colors, and there's labels, and this is all very scary. But what you need to know is that each one of these cards is a feature. You can drag them around. You can click on them. And when you click on one, it gives you a description and an activity, and it doesn't show you anything else at this point. The concept is that your to-do list is this column over on the left-hand side. You add cards, which are features, into that column, and then as you work on them, you drag them from the left of the screen to the right of the screen. So now I've dragged this feature across to the in progress column. And I work on this, and if it was a bigger team, if it was more than me, then it could be more than one person working on that card or that feature. When that feature is done, it gets dragged across again going left to right to the done column. And this is usually the point where you would give it to somebody to test, to the QA department, and they say it's not quite done yet. We've got these bugs. At that point, the magic of this system is you drag it back again to the left, and now it's in the in progress again. And so a healthy project has these cards being generated by people who want features in the game. They get dragged across, they move generally to the right, and then if it's done, if you manage to do it first time because it's the loading screen, for example, that should go into the done column pretty quick and get tested. As you're discovering the game, as you're finding out things which are fun and things which aren't fun, these features can get changed and morphed, and they go back left again to the in progress. And if you get, and this happens to me quite a lot, get bored, you run out of energy working on a feature, and you get this really long in progress. I'm working on this, I'm working on sound, I'm working on input, I'm working on blah, blah. You can just drag them all back to the left again. And this is how you control the scope of what you're working on in that moment. So it's just columns and feature cards, and these feature cards move left and right. And I'm going to talk about making from scratch a board. Let's see, where are we up to? So that's me breaking it down. So what you're really doing here is you're creating features, but a feature could be, as I said, making a 3D character run through the world. But that's a really huge thing to think about. So what you really want to do is you want to break it down into deliverables. The idea of a deliverable is it's something concrete. It's a line of code, or it's a picture, or a sound effect, or a particle that ends up in the game. And when you have a bunch of these deliverables together, all serving one purpose, well, that's your definition of a feature. And when all of these features are done, when you've ticked off all of the deliverables for every feature, then by definition, you're done. The game is done, right? So it's a nice way of being able to quantify what it is you're working on, what you want to see in a game, and know that when you've done all the deliverables, it's time to walk away. That's the definition of done. So I'm going to take you through a card. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to build it again from scratch. So if you guys have got a running Trello, feel free to do this in the background, or you can follow along with me. I'm going to get rid of these columns as well. Archive, archive, archive. So we're starting with a completely blank board, and we're going to add a list, and we're going to call this the to-do list. And that's where the cards which are going to have your features on are going to go. And then we're going to add another list called in progress. That's what you're working on today. And then finally, we're going to have the done. And you can add extra steps if you like. You can go into QA and then back to done, or you could go into a polish column. But these are the basic flow of it is something that you know needs to happen, something that you're working on, and then something that's done. And then we're going to click add a card, and we're going to call this, for the first one, the design brief. Design brief it used to be called design documents. And here's the issue with design documents. Designers really like to write a lot. They write reams and reams and reams of Word document text. And the designer loves their words. And being a designer myself, you can really get deep into the weeds writing out how this feature is going to work and what this law is and how the story goes. But the dark secret of the games industry is that nobody reads design documents. A coder, the idea is that the designer will hand the coder the document and say, there you go, those are my thoughts. You can you just need to go off and implement that. And then when you do that, then we'll be done. And the coder doesn't read it because it's words and words and words and words and words. And I've worked with a guy like 10 years ago who would just sit in the corner of the room and just madly type all day long, just type, 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 type. And it was densely packed, paragraphed, just pages and pages, like Lord of the Rings, basically. And nobody but him read that stuff. So the trend these days is to do design briefs, which are much shorter, much more visually exciting documents where the designer can take them through, the coder through what the idea of the feature is. So here's a design brief. It's only 15 slides in Google Slides. Hanan will remember this from the lessons in the summer, the courses that we did. The idea was that I was asked to do the design for this game by my boss at Boomzap, and he was specifically thinking of a game that already exists on Steam called Glass Masquerade. And so I looked at Glass Masquerade and I played it a lot, and I tried to figure out, what aspects of it he wanted to see in a Steam game. So talking about some details like its progression, what kind of challenge it is. The idea is that you don't have to, the person reading this doesn't have to play the game themselves to understand. And then I came up with the core gameplay loop, which I managed to do in a GIF. Again, cutting down on the number of words needed to be typed because people don't like to read. And I wanted to get across the core gameplay idea visually as much as possible. This document became the pitch document, which is up until this screen is kind of the pitch. And then after that, when you add more and more details, it morphs into a design brief. And it means you don't have to throw away work you've done, and you can expound on your idea. So it's got some mechanics. These are shapes which are very similar. If you touch these together, they're going to give you points. These two shapes are not similar. If you touch them together, they're going to cost you a life or something. These shapes are very similar, but they're not quite. So you've got to look out for that kind of thing. This is the group of shapes, but one of them is wrong, so they're not going to give you maximum points. And you can expound on the gameplay by adding bonus systems, etc., etc. Remember, this is before the idea of animals came along, so it's pretty basic, but the idea of the game is there. And when you write that, you've got a center piece that you can refer to, but it's just a document. and it should be as visual as possible. And what we're going to do is we're going to add this document to this card as an attachment. All right, so this is now, we can just rename it design brief. So this card now contains a document which is attached to it, and it's also got a description at the top. And it's important when you're writing these descriptions that somebody else coming along to implement the feature is going to understand what the concept of the feature is. Why are we doing this? So I always put a why line in there, and I like to use markup. So Trello's got this fantastic feature where you can put a couple of asterisks, underline it with equal signs, and then you will see nicely marked up text. And so for this particular card, it's going to be a pretty simple one to create a design brief for a simple shape matching game. Under the why, you would put the what this card is actually representing, and you can be pretty terse there. Design brief for, I always spell brief wrong, future reference. Okay, so now you got a big why and you got a what. And you got the document that you've written in Google Slides attached, and you can click off it. And now this card is a hub, right? It's got a brief description, it's got a document attached to it, and you can even add screenshots. Let's do that. So I find it helpful visually if I attach a screenshot to something and go, oh yeah, that's what that feature is. So it's now got a document attached and a design brief. And you think, okay, I know exactly what this card is, what this feature is. But the most important thing is now the checklist. And the checklist is the list of deliverables, which when they are all done, the game will be, or this feature will be finished. So for this, if let's say I hadn't written a design brief yet, but the coder wanted to see a design brief for a particular feature, maybe not the whole game, but you would type something like Google Slides document for one checklist item and screenshots, stroke mock-up art to help visually communicate the ideas. So now you have a card, and the designer, in this case this is me, drags it across. This is what I'm working on today. It's no longer in the to-do column, it's in progress. But it's important here that the person who is expected to deliver the deliverable gets called out by name. And in Trello, you can add a board member, and you can add lots of different people to a card, and you can divvy up the work between them. But in this particular case, because it's me, I'm going to add @Tony, and that resolves to @Wilfred. That's my email address. And so now you've got a list of tasks and the person who's expected to deliver them. And this can get exciting when you come across a task that it's going to take more than one person to deliver. So somebody's doing the screenshots, but somebody else is writing the prototype or mocking out something up in 3D, let's say. You can add multiple different names so that these two people are expected to deliver this. And so people come in and they sit down and they do their work. And as each item in the checklist gets completed, it gets a nice tick. And that feels really good. It's kind of a gamification thing. I don't know what it is, but it's when this card is done and it's complete, it's a good feeling. And then it's dragged across to the done column, and the person who is expecting this feature, in the case of my project, it's me. I have to convince myself that feature is done, but for somebody else, it could be the project manager or the executive producer or something like that. They would then review the work and decide whether this is actually done or not. And at this point, because this is a living card, this is a hub, right? It's not written in stone once and then once it's done, it's done. At that point, the producer or the client for the feature can add extra tasks. Soundscape mockup.wav, and I expect I need to do that one as well. And now you've got tasks added to this. It's the same feature. It's got the same information to it, but now you can add more stuff, and as I mentioned before, it gets dragged back across to in progress, or could even go all the way back to do, because the person might not want to have time to do that straight away. So it goes back into that list. And that's the life cycle of a feature. It goes from left to right, and then if it's done, you can send it to another board. I've got, let's find my done board. Herding Cats done. So this is all the stuff that I did several weeks ago. You can break it up, so each on this board, each column is a week, so you can see what you did in that particular week. Let me show you one from an actual game that I worked on. So this is a real life Trello board for a game that we worked on called Hidden Conspiracy, and the publisher was Hipster Whale. So if you play Crossy Road, as you can see, lots of features, lots of screenshots, lots of attachments, but there is a done board, and you can go back. This is back in February, January, December, November, and it's a really great way of going back and going, what exactly did we do in April? Did we do anything at all? Did we achieve anything? Ah, yeah, right. We achieved that. These 3 huge features. And that's why it feels like we didn't get much done. They were low in number, but high in quality, something like that. So let's catch myself up. Yeah. So just to quickly review that, your card is where you type in the why of the thing and the what, and you attach a checklist of deliverables. Once a deliverable is done by the person assigned to it, it's very important. I need to really stress, if you build a card which is full of deliverables and no names attached, then anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. Like, you can say, well, we talked about this, guys. I thought you were going to put the sounds in, but I thought you were going to put the sounds in. You've got the sound library. Yeah, but I was going to send it to you. Yeah, but you didn't, right? It's important to assign the blame, or, you know, the plaudits, you could call it that, to people. No deliverable will put itself into the build by itself. It just cannot happen, right? Code does not leap magically from the IDE into the game without somebody doing it. So state the why, attach documents, screenshots, sound effects, music, concept art, references. This card should be a one-stop shop. Like, I don't want to go to lots of different places to kind of collect all this information together. I have to go to Google Docs for the design brief, and then I need to go to Dropbox to get the art, and then somewhere else and somewhere else. I want to go to one card, look at it, read it, internalize it, and understand, okay, this is what the feature is. And these are the people working on the feature. So I can check with them if something isn't clear. And you can also, if I go to my Herding Cats board, you can attach labels. So it helps sometimes to break down the features into what is this trying to achieve. So for me, this is the core gameplay. This is the most important central aspect of the game, to the exclusion of all else. So it's the way the animals drop onto the world. They have to feel good. When you pick it up, there can't be any lag. When you touch 2 like animals together, it has to feel very rewarding and satisfying, because if none of that is true, then the game isn't going to be satisfying at its core. And it doesn't matter how much metagame you add, how many maps, sound effects, if that core central thing isn't fun, it's never going to be fun. So that, for me, gets its own label, core gameplay. And then you can work on different aspects. Okay, now I need to figure out how to monetize the game. So I need to put a feature in that's going to give me money. And in this case, for my game, it's if I load it up as an example, when your board gets full of dead animals, you can drop a bomb and clear them out. So let's say a bee touches a cat, they both die. I can drag a bomb across and clear them off the board, but I've only got 3 of these bombs. And if I want to get more bombs, I can either earn them by playing, or you can send me some money. I prefer the latter, obviously. So is this core gameplay? No, it's a monetization feature. It's taking a gameplay feature and trying to figure out a way to make some revenue from it. So yes, so I tend to break things down into the type of feature they are. Bugs get their own card, and the bugs checklist can get really long. I sit on the couch, I play the game on my phone. I've got the iPad next to me. I find a bug, I write it down as soon as I see it. And these are the bugs that I've fixed in the last week. But it's really helpful to have somewhere that you can go back to, and maybe not working on feature today, maybe you're working on bugs. So that's a secondary use, and it helps to identify things with colors and labels. So bugs need to get fixed. You can also use it for content tracking. So for example, this column here is not a to-do, but I found I wanted to make a few levels to test out different kind of shapes and arenas. But I kept kind of losing track of like, which level is this? Why was that level 5 was the one with the big hole in the middle, or was it level 3? I can't remember. So I just went through and did a screenshot of each level and attached it to a card. And now it's a visual reference. I can go, yeah, that's right. I need to improve the textures on the level 5 arena. And it's a nice visual way of keeping track and seeing how your progress is. So this column could go over here, could go on a different board entirely, but I like to keep it there so that I remember what the current graphics look like on the game. All right, what else? Yeah, content tracking. This is what the content tracker I used for the Loveboat 2 project for Gamehouse. That was on iOS and Android. There were, I think, 60 levels and a storyline that went through every level, and each level had different characters in them and different gameplay types, different mini games, and that kind of thing. If you leave it to a Word document or an Excel document, you can get lost in it really quickly. Trello provides this way of, you put a screenshot of the game and you can attach labels of which characters are currently in this level and what is the major story beat that this level is going to express to the player. And it had 5 or 6 chapters, 10 levels in each chapter. So this is a huge amount of content to maintain and keep track of. And without Trello, I would have gotten lost, and I would have had to have gone into the game and played the level to remind myself what happened in that level. And that's incredibly time consuming. So not fun for anybody. So summary, if you're working on games, I highly recommend you use Trello. You'll find, what I was surprised by was the fact that all the publishers now use Trello as well, because they want to see progress and screenshots, and they want to communicate on aspects of the game. And pretty quickly, all of the publishers suddenly got on board and were expecting to be kept up to date using Trello, which I thought was pretty cool because it's really awesome. Remember, the cards are hubs, so anything relating to that feature goes on that one card. You don't want people looking all over the place in Google Slide and Dropbox and different places to glean the information. You drag cards to the right as they get worked on and progress happens, but they also get dragged left because sometimes the feature isn't good enough at the end. When it's in the done column, you play it and go, oh, that's not very good. That isn't as fun as I thought it would be, or that could have some more sound effects. You drag it left again. This is using the Kanban system, which is a project management system that originated in Japan with Toyota, actually. This concept of you working on something, it goes to the right, and then when something needs to be changed on it, or it's not quite correct, or it's not quite done, drag it left, and then it works its way right again. As you discover the fun of the game, as you discover things that you can add or things that you can take away, you update the card. You can remove entire checklists. You can untick something which you thought was done. So this character for this art for this character is done. No, it's not. It needs to be polished. It needs to be updated. You can just untick it and now drag it back to the to-do column, and now the artist knows that that piece of work is to be done again. It helps you be honest when evaluating. I find it's really hard. It's so hard to get features into this done column because it can come down to one particular thing, which is a lot of work. Let's see, what's an example of that? This tools platform, yeah, so the tool platform is this thing that you drag your bomb off over here. And the idea is that in the final version of the game, it won't just be a bomb, it will be something that stops time or freezes all the characters or something like that. So more opportunities to spend a resource and therefore get revenue. And this was on the Trello board for a long time. And it had everything done except the one thing, which was platform can't be used to store or interfere with creatures. So the issue was you could drag a creature off the arena and put it on that little purple platform, and they could just sit there. And I had to change the approach I was taking. I had to change the physics system so that if you tried to put a cat on that little platform, it would just fall through. And it wouldn't interfere with the bomb. And that was a huge piece of work. And eventually I did it, but that card sat in the almost in progress column for a really, really long time. And I couldn't say, yes, the tool platform is done until that was done as well. And I find that really helpful. It's a forcing function to make sure that you're honest with yourself. Like, is this really done? It's probably not. It's probably not really, really done. All checklist tasks get a name because features, art, sounds do not get into software by themselves. There's someone who does it. There's a responsibility there, and it really helps, especially if you're working with a team where you know what is expected of you and you can see what other people are working on and you can see their progress. You can see the tick boxes get ticked as other people. You can even see in Trello when the other person uses it, you can see the cards flying around. So you can see, oh, Matt is currently working on this project. Oh, no, he's moved the card back again, so it's not done yet. So it's a very visual way of communicating progress with the team, which is incredibly helpful. If you look at a card, it's just sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks because nobody wants to touch it. Do you need to reevaluate the card? Is it really something that needs to be done? Is it not exciting the team for some reason? Or has somebody been assigned to it and they got given the due date for that card and they're just not getting to it because they've got too many other things to do? Again, visually, it's a great way to say, this card here, this sound effects, why is it taking so long? This should have been simple. Maybe we've been doing the wrong scoping for this. Maybe it's a bigger task than we thought and we need to reevaluate it. And then finally, yeah, store your done cards on a separate board because maybe a few weeks or months from now, you'll think, we need to go back and change the map system, but that was done weeks ago. You can just drag that card back to the board you were working on, your in progress board, and start working on it again. You don't have to write it again from scratch. You don't need to find the documents or the screenshots. All your information is there, and it's a one-stop shop. And you can go back, and this is how you can do polish as well. You can take features which you considered were done and work in them again. And in the context of the December competition, what I do want to say is this system, any project management can feel a bit heavy, can feel like you could be working on the game, but instead you're working on the project management and what's more valuable. With Trello, because everything's kind of quick and simple and easy, you can find yourself doing a feature in a couple of hours or half an hour, tick it off and get it into the done column. And that gives you a little impetus. It makes you feel like you're getting some progress done. And as long as you keep the cards kind of simple and up to date, then this is perfectly applicable to really short time frame projects, as well as month-long projects as well. So I believe that is my talk today. With 3 minutes to go before the end of the hour. That's pretty good timing. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, Qatari Game Dev has a question. Scrum approach is better than non-Scrum approaches. When we started doing Scrum at Crytek in 2006, it was kind of foisted upon us and we didn't really understand it. The good things we took from it were working in small groups, cross-discipline groups, keeping everybody informed. In Scrum, you have a daily stand-up and you talk about what you're working on that day. So the communication aspects of it were really good. And there were some parts of it which we didn't adopt because they were too costly for time and for energy. And I can't even remember why they were so important at the time. The important things were cross-discipline, keep everybody informed, and come up with the dates and what you're working on yourselves. And those are the things from Scrum. I don't subscribe to the the big Scrum book version of it because I don't think it's particularly suitable for games. But yeah, I'd say I do things the Scrum way. Of course. Any other questions? Let's go back to my cats. Aren't they cute?
Is this game published?
No, I'm currently talking to BoomZap in Singapore. I'm still working on it, so yeah, we're going to start shopping around to publishers.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I need to get a build out on the Qatari Game Dev Discord channel to get feedback and to get ideas. It runs on Android already, so I want to get that out at some point in the next couple of weeks. So watch this space.
Sure thing. But yeah, that was really great, Tony. I think in general, Trello is an amazing tool to for team managements across the board. If you're working on any project or even research project or like you name it. But I like how that's the first time I see how it's used in game development. That's really eye-opening. So if you guys have any, I'm not sure if you guys have any more questions, but let me share with you our Instagram page for those of you who are interested to know about the coming game competition. I'm sharing in the chat, so make sure you follow us. We'll share all news. In the future, we'll be sharing a few tips about game development and how to make the most of the time while you're in the competition. Hopefully, we want to see you all there. Big thanks, Tony. That was really fun listening to you today.
Of course.
Yeah.
Fun for me too.
Thank you so much, and big thanks also to the game development community who's been helping CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, to make this happen. These workshops and also the coming competition. So yeah, looking forward to see you guys in our future events, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you for organizing everything, Hanan.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, everybody.
All right. Thanks for coming by, everybody. Ciao.
Bye-bye.